Of late, I've been on a little quest to get a bunch of exploration fantasy, kind of overland fantasy games from the 90s, maybe the late 80s. World of Warcraft is my most recent acquisition. I've done Talisman was falls into that category. Was not I was just not playing these games then. I guess I was gaming, but wasn't really playing these games then, and I missed quite a lot. And the reason that I'm looking for these things is because I guess you could call it a runebound seeking quest, in the sense that, as you know, if you watch any of my other videos, Runebound Second Edition is one of my all-time favorite games, and it is a quest to find a Runebound lookalike, as it were, to find other games that may have been published around that time that capture some of what I love about Runebound: the flexibility, the sense of an open world, a sandbox, really, and combining that with a what I would consider to be a rules light system that lets you have a lot of house rules, lets you maybe even play sort of without competition, as it were. So we're overlooking here my setup of this game. I've got 4 characters going, and I'll just say a couple of things to start here about this video. First of all, unlike other games on the channel that I present that are not solo designed, such as Talisman, this video is most likely not going to comprise of my solo variant on it. I've been playing it per the rules. I've got 4 characters going. I've been playing it per the rules. There is in this game a lot of player versus player interaction, and some of the major elements of the game even comprise that, so that some of the quests that you need to cover, you need to achieve, are based on player versus player interaction. I don't know that it's soloable, or I don't know that one could create a co-op version of it. I am going to be showing you some house rules that I put into play to both shorten the game a bit, and also that kind of make conceptual sense to me and take a little bit of the gaminess of the game out. And by that, I mean the fact that this is, like some of the other games I've mentioned, this is a roll and move kind of game. And here you are rolling and moving based on the colors of the indications on the map. And it's a little hard to see here in the morning light, but for example, you can see this path toward this area of interest is red. This one is green. There are yellow ones and gray ones, and those represent the levels of the characters that you have to obtain. So you begin on a gray level, moving to green, yellow, and red, and this is how your characters level up, and those correspond to the various character cards. We'll go over all of this, but a central mechanic of the game is that you cannot move into a new color area until you have leveled up. As I've been playing, what this practically means is you are, for example, starting with gray, and you're kind of wandering around a small area until you get enough to succeed at this map-based encounter, which with this green arrow will tell you you can then level up to green, and then you can move to green. But as it is, the map itself is it's not interconnected in ways that allow for such fluid movement. So I have found that this is lengthening the early portion of the game a lot. And one of the rules that I'm working with is that initially you can move to gray and green, which are the first 2 levels here, allowing you to select your challenge cards. And in this regard, if you're familiar with Runebound, you know that it's similar, that whatever they're called, the adventure tokens on Runebound, the colored ones, you can just get whatever you want and whatever color you want, and hope for the best if you're choosing a higher level card early on the game that you're going to be able to handle it. So that is one of the ways I'm working with this to tweak it and make it a little faster play. In looking around the internet, I've also been surprised, for such a big IP. And if you're not familiar, World of Warcraft was a video game. Put the dates up. I can't really remember. I did play it when it came out. This is one of a couple of cardboard games based on it. There's also something called Warcraft, the board game, which I have not played. And I think which came out first, and which does seem to be sort of have more legs than this one does in terms of current popularity. That involves more, I guess, like war bands, you'd call them, than this, which is individual characters. This was published by jointly with a licensed Blizzard product. Blizzard was the publisher of the video game, and it's Fantasy Flight. And it's showing here 12 plus, 2 to 4, 90 to 120 minutes. You can see here pretty standard Fantasy Flight fare in terms of what they're offering. There's a lot of stuff in the box, and I have picked up some character expansions, and I'll talk about what that offers into the game. It, generally speaking, just provides you with more selection of cards in addition to the characters, and more selection of these discovery tokens, these things here that are placed on the map, some of which are good and some of which are bad. And they're placed on the map so you can't see them, and then you will choose them as you go. And it's, looks like a bit of a mess here because I'm playing it in a space that's too small for it. So this has nothing to do with the game. I just can't get rid of it right now. Probably move this to a better space to get into the video of the game. There's a surprising amount going on with characters, and here we're going to take a look at this Brandon Lightstone character, and this is his little mini here. He and every other character have their own deck of character cards, and there's 23 cards in this deck, and they are cards that will offer special abilities in combat. There's a maximum hand size of 10. There's no set time that you draw cards during the game, but there are in-game effects on the board and through other cards that will give you opportunities to get cards into your hand. And each card has a cost, or most cards have a cost, an energy cost to utilize them, and you gain energy by rolling this movement die. And what the movement die gives you is a combination of how many spaces you can move and how much energy you have for the turn. And one of the nice things that's done here is that if you roll typically lower movement, you're getting more energy. So you're getting something out of every turn. If you only get one energy, you're getting 4 spaces to move, and if you're getting only 1 space to move, you're getting 3 energy to use. So this makes this is pretty well balanced in that regard. And each of the cards also has an icon at the bottom, the one of 3 icons that will tell you at what point in your turn you can utilize the card. So the foot is utilized at the beginning of the turn during movement. The daggers or sword points here are during combat, and this can be utilized at any time during a turn. And the cards themselves are thematic to the character. I'm not going to go through every character and all the different cards, but you'll see that there's fighter characters, magic characters, range characters, etc., and their cards will be thematic to them. This particular character has a lot of these seal cards, and I guess this is a cleric actually. So he's got or some sort of character like that. And you can see that certain cards can become attachments, like this Seal of Light, and it says you can attach this to your character and then discard all other attached seals. When one of your attacks hits an enemy, you heal 1 damage. You can discard this card from your play to heal 1 damage. So that would be different, for example, than this Seal of Command card, which I currently have on the character, which will allow +1 attack if you spend 1 energy, and you can discard that as well and switch it out. I also have a Blessing of Wisdom card currently attached, and this will allow you to, at the start of your movement phase, to draw 1 ability card. Your deck, these cards are your ability cards, and then you discard this card or pay 1 energy to keep it. So there's a lot of variability on the characters in the ability deck. The other things that this character has, and other characters also would have if they could get them, are reward cards that could be weapons or armor. for example, and you can only have one weapon or one armor equipped at a time. What's clever about this game is that the encounters that you have in combat as you travel through the world, on the back of them, and you're free to look at this information before you do the encounter, is your reward. So when this character defeated Redwidge Mystic Humanoid, he got this weapon. Now, weapons and armor have restrictions as to whether or not they can be equipped. Not only the amount restriction that I indicated, for example, you could only have one weapon equipped at a time, but there are certain other icons, and the icons have to match up if they are there. I have to say they're a little hard to read. They're dark, and some of them are not very well differentiated. But if you don't have an icon match, you cannot use that card for its say its weapon value. This is a bad example because it doesn't have a restriction. But every card also has one of three symbols here, meaning you could alternatively use that card. In this case, I think this is the healing potion symbol, to trade that in at a certain place in the map to use it as a healing potion. So every card can be used. It may only be able to be used in a certain manner that might not be the central manner. So for example, here is a scale mail vest. This offers a +5 shield value against damage that's coming in. And this is the icon that you need to have in order to use this vest in that way. And you can see here that, again, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see here that this character does match up this icon. If this character did not match this icon, we could still retain this item and use it for its trade-in value of this, which is, I believe, an energy potion. So it would give you 1 energy if you traded it in that way. That's something that you have to be on the lookout for as a detail of the game. Additionally, the characters each have 4 character cards, and they're double-sided, as are many of the cards in the game. And the character colors represent leveling up. So right now, Brandon Lightstone is at the green level, which is the second of 4 levels in the game. The levels are from lowest to highest: gray, green, yellow, and red. And he has leveled up to the green level. And there are 2 sides to each card with different benefits that are offered and different options to flip the card at the beginning of a turn. Some are at the beginning of a turn, some cost energy, some cost other things to do. So you're getting choices there. And then as you level up, the values, your basic melee value, which is what this is, your armor, and your the amount of wounds that you will inflict on somebody in successful combat change. So you can see, for example, as you get stronger here, you're going to be having the same values here, but you're going to be increasing the amount of damage that you could potentially do. And then when you get to the red level, your actually melee value is higher, as is your armor value. And then, well, that's the highest level. I have these a little bit out of order. So you can see here as they increase. And all the characters have these 4 cards with 2 sides on them, giving further options. So even though there's only 3 stats for the character, there's your basic attack value, which could be either melee or ranged. And I'll show you an example of a ranged base value has this bow and arrow as opposed to the sword. So this has a basic ranged value of 1. You've got that, and you've got your defensive value, and then you have the number of wounds that you would inflict in successful combat. Even though that's it, you do have many options because of the ability cards, and then the cards that you're picking up along the way, the equipment cards that you will be able to add on to your character to use in combat and other encounters. I've rearranged this now that I'm mid-game to give you a sense of just how big it is. And I'm going to come in and show you a turn and then just discuss a little bit about, is this a game that is worth seeking out? Does this answer some of those questions that I have, and maybe some of you have, about is there something else out there like Runebound Second Edition, like Talisman, and by like I mean a sort of sandboxy adventure game that could potentially be played solo if you just wanted to walk around and have encounters and things like that. Looking at it here as it is meant to be set up, you can see the orientation of the map here, which is pretty important because everything is named in it, and there are many quests that you will pick up that will have you go from one place to another and place a character marker that you have perhaps on the city to indicate where you have to go. And there's a lot of map reading. So for the solo player, even though it's not a solo game, it makes sense if you can just orient the map and sort of sit in front of it and read it. Down the side here, similar to the Runebound mechanic, when you have an incomplete encounter, you place it here and then you take the marker and place it on the map to indicate that that is an incomplete quest, or not a quest, incomplete encounter, and can go back to it and refer to it what it is. And here are the 4 characters that I have set up. Off to the side are the adventure cards and some tokens up here. This is mostly what I'm showing you, but this is like half my dining room table. So it's pretty well involved for what it is. We're going to take a turn with this character, Brandon Lightstone. And the first thing to do before even rolling is to just check your hand to see if there's any card. There are certain cards you have that might indicate to use before you even roll a die. I don't think he has that, but you do need to be on the lookout for that. These cards can be used during the movement turn. So the movement die is the blue one, and it's going to give you an indication of how far you can, how far you can move, as well as how much energy you get for moving. So or I should say for the turn. So in this case, we can move up to 3, and we only have, unfortunately, 1 energy to spend. I am going to just move us to, well, you know what? I'll move us 2. And the first thing to do here is we have a discovery token. So this is going to be either a positive or a negative for us. We didn't have to move here and get it, but why not? We'll just show what happens. So we don't know what it is. We turn it over, and of course, this being a video, it's a negative. The red ones are negative. Black Lotus. Attach this token to yourself. Your maximum hand size is 5. Discard this token when you activate a large healing potion resource. Okay, so in the game, our default hand size is 10, which is pretty big. Our hand size now is going to be 5 because we've got this Black Lotus. If we discard a large potion healing resource, we can get rid of this restriction, and those are the resources that I mentioned. I don't have one here that will come into play on some of the item cards you get. So we're going to need to be on the lookout for a large healing potion icon on a card. I don't see any out, so I can't show it to you. It's basically like a bigger version of this in a sort of flask. So that happened, and then the next thing, we're on a green, so we're going to choose a green encounter, and you choose the encounters from the bottom of the deck because they're double-sided and you're not meant to see what they are. Once you choose it, you can look at either side, so you immediately know what the challenge is and what the reward is. And we have encountered this Murloc Steam Runner. He's a humanoid. It looks like a fish, actually, but maybe he's got a foot. I don't know. A humanoid and aggro, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. It gives the special indication if a ranged attack defeats this encounter, it can still make a melee attack unless the attacker rolled sword, which is the 6. Let me explain what this means. One of the issues with the game in terms of game balance is that when you have combat, you have ranged attack first and then melee. If you have a ranged ability, and let's see, do we have a ranged ability? We actually do not. But if you have a ranged ability, you will do your attack first and can just knock out a character. If you knock out the character and they don't have range, they can never attack back. So you can just kind of stampede your way through the game, as I have been doing with this character right here, Sandre Darkshine. She started out with this 1 ranged, but she picked up along the way, she picked up this high-tech super gun, which is giving her a 3 modifier to her range, and this becomes very deadly because she just can encounter somebody who's only a melee character and maybe get rid of them before they have a chance to fight back. In any case, this particular card would give this character the ability to fight back from a ranged attack. We're not going to be making a ranged attack, so it won't come into play. This character has a 2 modifier on its melee. It has an armor value of 5, and it will inflict 1 wound if it's successful. What do we get? Oh, we get a ranged thing here. We get a fine longbow, which will give us a 1 modifier to a ranged attack, and we could potentially get a large mana potion, which would allow us to activate a card with 1 less energy, as well as the capacity to reroll a die if we rolled a 1, 2, or 3. In order to equip this for its ranged capacity, we have to be able to match this icon, and I mentioned that before, and actually we do not. So the only thing we could use this for, if we obtained it, would be this mana potion value. In any case, we're going to show you how we attempt to get it. It's going to be doing a melee attack, and as mentioned, we ourselves are going to be doing a melee attack. Our baseline melee attack is 2. However, we are equipped with this Assassin's Blade as a weapon. This gives us a modifier of 3. It's not cumulative, so it's either or. This gives us a value of 3, and also if we rolled a 1, we get to re-roll. We could have on this card expend 1 energy to increase our movement value by 1. Well, we didn't need to do that. We only have 1 energy to spend, so we also might want to look at our cards to see, is there anything that could help us in the combat? Well, unfortunately, our 2 cards here, a healing card and another healing card, both require 2 energy. We cannot use that. We have the Blessing of Wisdom already out. This is already attached. At the start of your movement phase, draw 1 ability card, then discard this card or pay 1 energy. Okay, we didn't do that, but we're going to do that, even though we shouldn't have. And here we can, our attacks gain, well, we get to re-roll the die. We can discard this card from playing after rolling to receive +1 attack. All right, so that's going to help us potentially. I didn't draw this card when I should have, but I'm going to draw this card right now just to get another card in our hand. And, well, that's pretty good, actually. It says play after rolling. Our opponent may not trigger any sword effects. That is this particular effect. Again, not coming into play here because we're doing only melee, but you could see, start to see where some of the, I don't want to say depth, but contours of the game lie. That there's a little bit more going on here than you might initially think. I do not want to discard this card, so I'm going to use the energy that I got on this die to keep this card for the next time. So that's it. I have no more energy to expend, but I do have some cards that are freebies, as it were, like Eye for an Eye and this Hammer of Justice that I don't need to use. Now, having worked all that out, then it just comes down to a basic D6 roll. The enemy, the encounter, rolls the black die. We roll the red die and add the relevant modifiers. In our case, it's going to be a modifier of 3. The Murloc Steamrunner's modifier for this melee is going to be 2. So we will do the basic roll and see what we got. They got basically a tie here. So, but I shouldn't have said that because it doesn't really work that way. Let's deal with us first. We rolled a 2, and we're going to add that to our Assassin's Blade attack value of 3 for a value of 5. We come back here to see, did we equal or exceed its shield value? We equaled it, and therefore we are dealing it the damage of a 1, and it is going to have just a health value of 1. So we have defeated this. However, it's a simultaneous attack. Its attack value was 3. A 3 plus a 2, another 5, coming back to look at our shield value of 4. We are, well, actually 5. We're wearing the scale mail vest. So the scale mail vest here is giving us the value of 5. However, he's coming in with the value of 5. So we are going to be taking what he's doling out, which is 1 wound. So we already had a wound here. We're going to be taking another wound, and we only have a health of 5, so now we're down to 2. We did, however, successfully defeat this, so we will be bringing into our hand this fine longbow. But again, unfortunately, we cannot use it because of this restriction here. We can only use this in a future turn to reduce the energy cost of the card by 1. And that is a look at how an encounter works. Basically, that's a fair demonstration of the sense that there's a bunch of stuff going on beforehand, and then it just gets down to the die roll. So there are things you need to be paying attention to. I failed to mention there in this game, there's a global event happening now. It's not relevant, but that's something you also need to be looking at. In this case, it's a global event involving the undead. So you can see there's a bit of a change here. We get a benefit to that if this were an undead, but it was not. So the fact that I forgot about it didn't matter. Now, had we failed to defeat this character, we would have put one of these tokens down on the space and put the character card over here. You notice it said it was aggro. What that means is you flip it over to the red side, and it means that this, if we place an aggro counter here, it cannot be avoided by somebody else who lands on this space. If it is not on that side, you can choose to avoid that counter. So that's one of the things that means. And that's basically a look inside how the encounter works in terms of what this game offers the seeker of a fantasy, adventure, sandbox, world forward kind of game. I think it's worth seeking out with some caveats. The encounter deck, it needs some modifications, or it just is too frustrating from a game perspective, I think. Just taking a look at the map, for example. What you are meant to be doing per the game rules is to travel around to the lower level, the gray level, until you're ready to get to a green level and level up. You're not allowed to go anywhere else unless it is your level or higher. So then you travel around these few spaces a bunch of times until you can defeat this, which then gives you access to this green. Well, you can only travel on this green until you level up and then get access to the yellow, and then you have to go all the way back and try to get to the red. Already the geography of the map is such that it's not all interconnected. And you may well pull up a quest that you need to complete. You could be standing here. The quest may be sending you down here to get something and then come back here to deliver it to get 1 quest point. I don't think they're called quest points, but the value of the quest. To end the game, you need 8 such points, at least per the rules. And this could take a very, very, very long time to do. In my play of it, well, first of all, I'm just kind of basically playing these 4 characters and just playing it for the exploration. I am playing a few variants. Number 1, I'm playing that you can just go wherever you want that's connected. If you dare to attempt a higher level encounter than you have leveled up already, so be it, and you will suffer the consequences. If you succeed in it, then you will level up to that level. You'll still have to go from gray to green to yellow to red, but you can do that freely and not just with the leveling up points. So that's one way that I'm playing. The second way that I'm playing with these 4 characters is, I guess you could consider it semi-co-op. So that when a character, it is their turn, if they successfully do something, whatever that might be, they can go again. And in effect, they can keep going until they are defeated in some way. So what that meant was, in this particular game, this character here, I mentioned Sandra Darkshine, partially because of her excessively strong ranged weapon was basically just sort of blowing through the game. She was going down, getting her quest, and on the way back up. And she just kept having turn after turn after turn. I didn't mind because I'm taking all the turns, but this really would not work with a group, I don't think. But for playing solo and running a bunch of characters, it makes sense because you can get more involved in the character and have a sense of what she's doing. It becomes pretty fragmented when you try to remember, go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then come back. Each time you have to really reread, oh, this is the quest, and I've got to figure out where I'm going here and what I'm doing. It just became a lot. It became a lot to remember, and it didn't flow very naturally. And then the final thing in terms of a win condition or a lose condition that I am loosely playing with at this point is simply to complete one quest, whatever that quest might be. Whoever completes one quest, that person has won. That could trigger the end of the game, or at least the end of their participation in it, and then however many characters remain, and you can continue on, and that is a goal. That is meant to happen before all of the, before there are 10 unfulfilled encounters on the board. That if you get to 10 unfulfilled encounters on the board, you lose. And by you, it means sort of the group that you are playing. Those are the loose rules that I've been playing with during this game, and it speeds things up a little bit. It keeps me remembering what I'm trying to do with each character and not have to go back and remind myself about what this quest is. Because again, a lot of these quests, like here, place one of your character tokens on Talisman-like, complete this quest by collecting that token and traveling to Stormwind City. Well, you have to remember, where is Talisman-like, where is Stormwind City, where am I? And you make a small movement toward that, and then your turn's over, and then you go to the next person, and then by the time you come back, you got to remember again, where is that, where am I, whatever. And a little bit of the involvement, I think, was compromised that way. But with those modifications and with the acceptance of the fact that this is not only roll and move, but it's not unlike, say, for example, Runebound, a little bit more like Talisman, the mechanics of the game board are such that there are restrictions. Now, I know there are restrictions in Runebound with the movement die, and you can't always go where you want to go, so it's not totally free form, but it feels a little bit more free form. Talisman also, with that movement, feels very restrictive to me. This feels restrictive in a different way, but by the modification of just moving around whenever you want, I think solves that problem. So I was really pleasantly surprised with this game. Be prepared for a big footprint. Be prepared for a whole bunch of things that you need to remember to do and look up, that then ultimately just come down to basically a D6 roll with some modifiers. And also be prepared for the fact that a ranged character could potentially just run away with the game because of the rule that if you encounter somebody without range, they never get a chance to fight back if you defeat them on the first round. But overall, I think World of Warcraft is a very light fantasy world that, for the soloist, can be pretty fun with just a few basic modifications if you're willing to put up with some of the fiddly nature of it and the large footprint.